Ladies and gentlemen, as soul chose you, it won't always start with flowers, perfect timing, and smooth words. Sometimes it starts with a strange sense of familiarity, like you've known him longer than the calendar says, like your spirit recognized something before your mind could explain it. Real connection is not loud at first. It's deep, it's steady, it pulls instead of pushes. Here are 8 deep signs you'll feel when the connection is soul level, not just emotional, not just physical, but spiritual. You feel emotionally safe and naturally authentic around him without pretending, and that feeling shows up in small, quiet ways before it ever becomes something you try to define. You notice that you don't rehearse your sentences before speaking. You don't scan his reactions to measure whether you're being accepted. Your laughter comes out unfiltered, your opinions come out honest, and even your awkward moments don't feel dangerous. Emotional safety is not built from compliments alone. It comes from the absence of fear. You are not afraid that one wrong word will make him pull away. You are not afraid that showing vulnerability will be used against you later. Your nervous system relaxes instead of staying on alert. Around him, you don't feel the need to impress. You feel free to express. There is a difference. Impressing is performance. Expressing is truth. When a connection is soul deep, your personality stops being a strategy and starts being a presence. You don't shapeshift to match his preferences. You don't silence parts of your story to look more acceptable. Even your flaws feel speakable. You can admit mistakes, doubts, and insecurities without feeling smaller afterward. Instead of feeling judged, you feel understood. This kind of safety also means you can say no without fear of punishment, and say yes without fear of being taken for granted. Your boundaries are heard, not negotiated down. Your emotions are listened to, not dismissed as overreactions. When you're quiet, he doesn't force noise. When you're expressive, he doesn't withdraw. Emotional safety allows your full range to exist. You also notice you're not exhausted after interactions. With most people, pretending is tiring. Wearing a social mask drains energy. But when authenticity is welcome, connection becomes energizing instead of depleting. You leave conversations feeling lighter, clearer, more like yourself, not someone you were trying to be. There is also a steady acceptance in how he responds to your truth. Not agreement every time, but respect every time. You're allowed to think differently, feel deeply, and speak openly without being made to feel difficult or dramatic. That acceptance creates trust, and trust creates emotional permission. You stop guarding your inner world so tightly and start sharing it naturally. Your real voice shows up, your real humor shows up, your real concerns show up, and nothing inside you feels like it has to hide to stay connected. Conversations quickly move from small talk to deep, meaningful subjects, and it happens without force or awkward transition. You might begin with ordinary topics, but somehow the dialogue keeps opening into more personal territory. Instead of staying on safe scripts about daily routines and surface preferences, you find yourselves talking about fears, turning points, values, regrets, purpose, and the lessons that shaped you. The exchange feels less like passing time and more like discovering layers. There is curiosity behind the questions, not interrogation, a real desire to understand how the other person thinks and feels. You notice that pauses are not uncomfortable. Silence doesn't pressure either of you to fill space with meaningless chatter. Silence becomes part of the rhythm, like breathing between thoughts. That comfort with quiet often signals depth, because neither person is trying to perform or entertain. Both are trying to connect. When words come, they carry weight. They are reflective, thoughtful, sometimes vulnerable. You're not just trading stories, you're revealing inner worlds. Depth in conversation also shows in the kinds of questions asked. Instead of what do you do, it becomes what made you choose that path. Instead of how was your day, it becomes what part of today affected you the most. The focus shifts from events to experiences, from facts to meaning. You feel invited to explain not just what happened, but what it meant to you. That invitation creates emotional openness, and emotional openness builds attachment. Time behaves differently in these conversations. Minutes stretch and compress at the same time. You look at the clock and realize far more time has passed than you expected. There is a sense of being mentally and emotionally engaged, not distracted. Neither of you keeps checking the phone or steering attention elsewhere. Presence becomes mutual. Listening is active, not polite, waiting for a turn to speak. You also feel mentally stimulated rather than socially obligated. The dialogue challenges your perspectives and expands your thinking. You're exposed to ideas, interpretations, and reflections that make you pause and reconsider your own views. There is room for disagreement without shutdown. Different opinions become doorways instead of walls. Respect holds the space so honesty can keep flowing. The emotional tone of these deeper talks carries sincerity. Jokes may appear, but they don't derail substance. Humor supports the connection instead of avoiding seriousness. Even sensitive topics feel approachable because the atmosphere is grounded in mutual regard and emotional steadiness. You're not digging for depth. You're naturally arriving there together. He understands your feelings and moods even when you don't explain them. And that understanding shows itself in subtle awareness rather than dramatic gestures. You notice he picks up on small shifts in your tone, your pace, your expressions, and your energy. When your voice sounds heavier than usual, he doesn't ignore it. When your replies get shorter, he doesn't assume disinterest. He senses something underneath. Emotional attunement like this is not mind reading, it's mindful attention. It comes from caring enough to observe patterns and notice changes. You feel recognized without having to send a full report about your inner state. Some days you don't have the language for what you feel, yet he responds in a way that fits your emotional temperature. If you're overwhelmed, he softens his approach. If you're excited, he meets your enthusiasm instead of minimizing it. If you're quiet, he doesn't accuse you of distance. He gives space without disconnecting. That kind of response creates relief because you're not pressured to perform emotional clarity on demand. This understanding also appears in timing. He knows when to ask questions and when to simply sit with you. Not every feeling needs analysis in the moment. Sometimes presence is more supportive than solutions. When someone is emotionally in tune, they don't rush to fix every mood. They respect it first. You don't feel handled. You feel held in awareness. There is also a pattern of accurate interpretation. He doesn't constantly misread your intentions or assume the worst about your reactions. If you sound stressed, he doesn't label you as angry. If you need space, he doesn't label you as cold. His interpretations lean toward empathy instead of suspicion. That reduces unnecessary conflict and builds emotional trust. You're not spending energy correcting misunderstandings every time your mood shifts. You also notice he remembers emotional details, not just events, but how those events affected you. He recalls what situations drain you, what environments energize you, what topics are sensitive, what memories carry weight. That memory becomes emotional intelligence in action. His support feels personalized, not generic. Because of this attunement, you become more comfortable, expressing feelings over time. Being understood without over-explaining lowers emotional guard. You don't feel invisible, and you don't feel exaggerated. You feel accurately perceived. Your inner weather is noticed, your emotional signals are received, and your unspoken states are given consideration without you having to translate them into perfect words. The connection feels calm and steady, not anxious or game-based, and that calm shows up in the way your thoughts and emotions behave around him. You're not stuck in constant guessing. You're not rereading messages 10 times trying to decode hidden meanings. You're not measuring response times like they're signals of worth. The interaction feels direct and grounded. When he shows interest, it feels clear rather than confusing. When he communicates, it sounds consistent rather than unpredictable. Emotional steadiness replaces emotional suspense. You notice your body doesn't stay in a stress response around the connection. There isn't a constant knot in your stomach about where you stand. Instead of adrenaline and worry, there is ease and focus. You can continue your daily responsibilities without being mentally hijacked by uncertainty. Real connection supports your stability. It doesn't disrupt your peace every day. The bond feels like something you stand on, not something you chase. There are no manipulation patterns driving the dynamic, no intentional disappearing to create desire, no strategic jealousy tactics, no silent treatments designed to gain control. Communication may not be perfect, but it is sincere. When space is needed, it is explained rather than weaponized. When interest is shown, it is not immediately withdrawn to maintain power. The absence of emotional games creates emotional safety. Consistency becomes more noticeable than intensity. Grand gestures are less important than reliable behavior. He shows up when he says he will. He follows through more often than he excuses. His tone does not swing wildly from hot to cold without reason. Predictability here does not feel boring, it feels trustworthy. You're not addicted to emotional spikes, you're supported by emotional reliability. This calmness also affects conflict moments. Disagreements do not instantly threaten the entire bond. You don't feel like one mistake will erase everything. The conversation stays focused on the issue instead of turning into personal attacks or withdrawal contests. Stability holds even when tension appears. Repair is valued more than victory. You also don't feel pressured to compete for attention or prove your worth repeatedly. Interest is not treated like a scarce resource you must fight to keep. Mutual care is expressed openly enough that you're not forced into performance. You're chosen through clarity, not confusion. The rhythm between you feels balanced, not rushed forward, not pulled back, moving with a grounded emotional pace that keeps your mind clear and your heart regulated. Being connected to him pushes both of you toward personal growth and maturity, and that growth does not come through pressure or control, but through influence and example. You start noticing that your standards rise naturally. You become more aware of your habits, your reactions, and your choices. Not because he demands change, but because the connection makes you want to show up stronger, wiser, and more emotionally responsible. Real growth in a deep bond is inspired, not forced. It feels like being called upward rather than being pushed forward. You find yourself reflecting more on your patterns, how you communicate when upset, how you handle disappointment, how you express needs. Instead of defending every weakness automatically, you begin examining it. Accountability becomes easier to accept because respect exists in the space. Correction does not feel like humiliation. It feels like alignment. When feedback comes, it is delivered with care, not superiority. That tone makes improvement feel possible rather than painful. He also demonstrates growth behavior himself. He listens when confronted instead of shutting down. He adjusts when something matters to you instead of dismissing it. You see effort, not stubbornness, as identity. Watching someone take responsibility for their impact makes responsibility feel normal instead of threatening. Mutual maturity grows through modeled behavior more than spoken advice. The connection challenges comfort zones in constructive ways. You may feel encouraged to speak more honestly, set clearer boundaries, pursue delayed goals, or heal unresolved emotional wounds. Avoidance becomes harder to maintain because the relationship environment supports truth. You're not allowed to hide behind excuses as easily, not through force, but through clarity. Awareness increases, and awareness invites change. Growth also appears in emotional regulation. Reactions become more measured over time. Instead of escalating every misunderstanding, you learn to pause, interpret, and respond. The bond becomes a training ground for patience, empathy, and restraint. You begin choosing long-term understanding over short-term emotional release. That shift is maturity in motion. You also notice that progress is mutual, not one-sided. You are not the only one stretching, learning, or adjusting. He is also refining communication, deepening empathy, and strengthening character. The relationship becomes a shared development space rather than a comfort shelter. Support and challenge exist together in balance. You feel encouraged to evolve, expected to grow, and strengthened through being known while still being invited to become better than your previous self.